Hi, today one of the things that we're going to be reviewing is going to be how to generate Emanifest on the ACESuite system. Before you can start doing an Emanifest, one of the first things that you need to do is go to your reference files and then select carriers. Under the carrier section, you need to set up per carrier who's going to be the driver, the conveyances, and the equipment. Now, in some instances, you don't have to create a catalog for the equipment, but for the conveyances and the drivers, you do require for those to be inputted in the catalog. Equipment, you can add those if you know that the boxes are going to always be the same boxes for the same carrier. You can create a catalog, or you can add them on the fly when you're generating your Emanifest. Now, one of the first things you need to do is under search, you're going to search by SCAC code or by carrier name. You can also display all. So right here, we're going to search for a SCAC code. And if the SCAC code does exist under the carrier's profile, then you'll be able to see the carrier code information on this section. If by any chance you're adding a SCAC code that does not exist on the system will automatically can verify that the carrier code is not on the profiles and will ask you if you want to query it. Once it is queried, you press OK and it sends out the query. The system will automatically integrate that carrier code into the carrier's catalog. So let's say right here that we already have a SCAC code. It does exist on our database. You're going to select the icon to edit the carrier code. And on this section is where you're going to be creating your catalogs to be able to add the passenger, the crew members involved for that carrier, the conveyances, your equipment, and then you have a section for notes. Now, keep in mind that if you know that your carrier is going to be doing hazmat information, on this section for the carrier profile is where you're going to be filling out the insurance information that is mandatory in order for you to do hazmat transmissions for Emanifest. Okay, so we're going to select edit. Now up here on this section for the carrier profile, you have a taskbar with a couple of icons. Now these icons are very important, the ones that say shared and IDs, because on the we have a shared database that is shared with several of our clients, so that generate Emanifest. So it could also be that somebody else has used this carrier code before, and you can select the shared and download the information from our shared database into your current ACESuite system, and that will eliminate a lot of inputting time that you would have to do manually. So I do recommend that before you start inputting any information, check the shared database first to verify if there's any information that exists already for this carrier code. That way you can skip the process of having to ask the carrier for the driver's information, conveyance information, or equipment information. Now, if it's a new driver for the carrier code and it's not under the shared database, then yes, you will have to add them. So as you can see right here on this section for the shared data, for crews and passengers, you can select, let's say you have a driver, you select it and it's the same driver that you're going to be using. You can select them. You can check under conveyances and do the same thing. Equipment, if there's any that you need to use that are the same as the ones being provided to you, you can select those, and then you can select the option download. Now what this option is going to do, it's going to download those crews, conveyances, or equipment that you selected from the shared database into your local ACESuite system. Like I mentioned, this is a tool that's going to go ahead and help you eliminate a process of you having to input information manually. Now, you also have the option right here that states IDs, and basically what this will do is that you can go into our shared database, verify the information for a carrier, and see if they have an ACE ID number already registered for them. Now, the ACE ID numbers were assigned to drivers when the Emanifest first initiated, and it was required that they all get registered under the A system for Emanifest, right? So there will be several drivers that have already that have already been registered in the ACE system, and you do not require to generate an ACE ID number. On the contrary, whenever you're going to be adding a new driver, we do not recommend for you to transmit a transmission to add the driver again. It's best that you transmit the driver with an action C if you require to get an ACE ID number for them. The reason being is that if this driver already exists in the ACE database, and you transmit it with the action C for change, it'll just download their current ACE ID number that they have. Now, if you transmit the driver with an action add, what it's going to do is going to generate another ACE ID number for that driver, and that can cause problems on the long run. It could be that the information that you inputted is not the same thing that the driver has registered with its previous ACE ID number, and there could be conflicts there in that situation, that when the driver is going to be crossing with customs, they get held up, they're taken in to verify their crossing documents, their driver's license. So to eliminate all these problems for the driver, the best thing for you to do is that when you're going to be adding the new driver and you want to get an ACE ID number for them, just go ahead and transmit them with an action C for change, and that will download their current ACE ID numbers. Or you can go into this database and verify first if any of the drivers exist that you're going to be using already have ACE ID numbers. Okay, so once you've done that, you verified information, you search through our shared database, downloaded in information, verified ACE ID numbers, you can go ahead and complete the required information now for the carrier information. Now for the carrier, you're not obligated to submit the address information. You are to fill out insurance information only if you're going to be doing hazmat transmissions. Okay, so if you know that this carrier is going to have hazmat transmissions, you are required to ask for the insurance name, their policy number, the policy amount, the value that it has, and the year it was issued. Another thing for the carrier information, if you're going to be doing transmissions through the fast shipment, then the carrier is required to be registered for CTPAT. So make sure you go ahead and select the indicator for CTPAT if you know that that carrier is already registered for CTPAT and will be using the fast lanes to cross their shipments. You have the option to assign a trip number. So basically what this option is going to do is that whenever you add a new Emanifest, the system will go ahead and give you a consecutive number for the carrier. So each carrier will have their own consecutive number. So let's say that you have this carrier, you put assign trip number, the system will start with PPCX 0001. And if you have another carrier and you put assign trip number, it'll start with let's say FFFFF 0001. So each carrier will start with the consecutive number unless you add the last trip number. So if you want for them to start with different consecutive numbers, specify the last trip number. If you've never done any trips for them, that's okay. Just go ahead and add a number, and then the system, once you add new, it'll start with that next number that you assign as the last trip number. Next, we'll go to the crews and passengers. So under the crews and passengers, like I mentioned earlier, if you haven't, if the carrier doesn't exist in our shared database and you need to add the driver, basically you would go ahead and select the plus sign at the bottom, add their first name, if they have a middle name, their last name, and the second last name. Now the second last name is for printing purposes only. It does not get transmitted to customs, but on some occasions, depending on how they have their crossing documents registered, they might have a second last name added to their documents, right? So you will have to add that second last name, so whenever the documents are printed and the driver presents their documents, they can see that their names are correct. You will have to add the date of birth, their gender, nationality, and the driver type. Now the driver type, if this is going to be a single driver and he's the main driver, the responsible party, you will have to go ahead and add the value for VW, for responsible party. Now there are some instances where there are multiple drivers in the one conveyance. What you will need to do is generate the profile for each one of the drivers. One of them will be set up as the responsible party, and the second driver will be either a crew member or a passenger, depending what their role is that they're going through with the driver. So if it's just a regular passenger, he's not going to be driving, make sure you flag them as a passenger. If he's a second driver, then add him as a crew member. You can add their email address. Now the email address is optional, and that will be only if the driver wants to receive the e-manifest once it's accepted through email, and they have, you know, that responsibility of taking out their own documents, printing them out if you're not going to be sending them out to them. Next, you do need to input their driver's license information, which is the driver's license number, country of issue, and the state where it was issued. If they do have a driver's license for hazmat, then go ahead and add the indicator for driver's license hazmat. Now the crossing document is very important that they do include it. Make sure you add the number for that crossing document, what type of document it is that they're presenting to you. We do recommend that you ask for copies of their driver's license and the crossing document and keep them in file. The reason for this is that if the driver starts having issues with customs once they're doing crossings, that they're being held up or something, on some occasions, in order for us to assist you to verify why the driver is being held up, we contact an ABI rep, and the ABI rep will ask for copies of their driver's license and their crossing documents. So if you have those on file, it'll go ahead and facilitate us in trying to contact the rep and giving them all the information that they require to resolve the issues with the drivers. Okay, so you will add the type of document and then the country of issuance. Now, on the type, if these are going to be US drivers, they either going to present a passport or their birth certificate. If they're going to be presenting their passport, make sure that when you're adding the number for the passport, you add the country where their passport was issued. So if it was a US passport, you add US, then the number of the passport. Okay. And then you would select passport from the list. You would select active, that it's an active driver. Now over here where it says the CBP, you have two options, the ACE ID number and the proximity card number. There is two differences on this section, and the ACE ID number is the number for that you request customs for them to assign an ACE ID number. Like I mentioned, it's not required on this system right now, but in some occasions, if the drivers have previously been registered with an ACE ID number, make sure you add that ACE ID number. That way customs can compare that the information that you're submitting is the same information that they have registered for the ACE ID. If the driver is registered for FAST, they have a proximity card number with a number on it. Make sure they give you that number and you add the proximity card number on this section. Now, if they have a proximity card number, they do not require an ACE ID number. If they have both the ACE ID number and the proximity card number, you need to make sure that the information provided in the ACE ID is the same thing that they have on the proximity card, which is another reason that customs sometimes has issues with the drivers, because both information are not the same. So if the information is not same in the proximity card registration and the ACE ID registration, they'll have issues there. So always make sure that the information provided is the correct and the same in both systems. Like I mentioned, if they have a proximity card number, just add the proximity card number by itself. Once you're done filling out the information, you press OK, and the system will go ahead and register the information for the driver. Okay, so once the drivers have been finished being inputted into their catalogs, the next step will be to set up the conveyances. For the conveyances, the same process as the drivers. If it doesn't exist under the shared database, you're going to select the plus, and you're going to fill in the information required. Now, the conveyance ID is a number that you're going to create, a unique ID, how to identify the conveyance in your catalogs. Some people may use their license plates or a number that the conveyance may have registered. Okay, so it is up to you how you're going to register your conveyance ID. So right here for this one, I'm going to put test. Now you need to select the type of conveyance that it is. If it's a tractor, you're going to go ahead and select you know, if it's a tractor. If it's a pickup truck, you're going to select a pickup truck, and sometimes it could be a box truck. So if it's one of those box trucks that has the, you know, the front part, the tractor, and then it has a box in the back already, everything attached into one, you're going to go ahead and search for the box truck. Now for a box truck, you won't need an equipment because the box is already attached to the tractor all in one piece, correct? So select box truck, and since it's not going to be pulling anything, you don't need an equipment. And the same thing goes for several of these options that you have right here for the conveyance types. Just make sure that how you're registering your conveyance is the correct type for that conveyance. If you don't know what is the type of the conveyance, or it's not listed on the list of catalogs, you can select other as a description. Okay, you are required to have the VIN number for the vehicle, for the tractor, so make sure that you have the VIN number. The VIN number will be inputted all together, no special characters, no spaces in between. Okay, you are required to have the license plate, so when you get the license plate, make sure you press the plus, add the license plate's number, the country of issue, and then the state. There are some conveyances that might have 2 license plates registered. If that is the case, make sure you add both license plates. So you add your US license plates, and if they have a Mexican license plate, make sure you add the next license plate as well. Okay, press save, and it'll have both license plates registered. Now, the transponder number. The transponder number, once again, if the conveyance is going to be crossing through the fast lane, they are registered in the fast systems and they're issued a transponder number. That transponder number is the one that you're going to add in this section for transponder. Okay, so if they're going to be using the fast lane, make sure they provide you the transponder number for the conveyance. Now, if the conveyance doesn't have a transponder number, and you would like to issue an ACEID number, you can get an ACEID number for that conveyance. The DOT, if they have the DOT number, make sure that you assign the DOT number registered to the conveyance, or you may leave this section blank. It is optional to fill out. Once you fill it out and it's all set up, press OK, and the system will go ahead and save it. Next, we're going to be moving on to the equipment. The equipment, once again, the same thing like the conveyance. You're going to check the shared database. If there is an equipment that you need, you can download it into the system, and that will save you time from having to be inputting everything manually. If the equipment does not exist on the catalog and you want to add the equipment to be registered on the catalog, because it's always going to be the same equipment, the same boxes that the carrier works with, you can generate a catalog, selecting the plus and adding again an equipment ID, which is a unique ID number that's going to be assigned to the equipment on how to identify it. Next, you'll add the license plates, the country of issue, and the state, and you need to select the type of equipment. So depending how the equipment is or what you're going to be using, you're going to select one of the options available in the catalog. The equipment does not require an ACEID number, so this section will be left blank all the time. Now, one of the things that I do want to mention in regards to the conveyance ID and the equipment ID, some people, like I mentioned earlier, do use the license plates as the conveyance ID or an equipment ID. Just keep in mind that once you add that equipment ID or conveyance ID and the system saves it, there's no way to go back and modify that information. It's happened where they use a license plate as a conveyance ID or equipment ID, and for some reason the conveyance or equipment they changed they changed license plates, and they want to modify the information for the conveyance as the conveyance ID to the new license plates numbers. We can't change that information. It's saved and it cannot be modified. So if that's going to be the case, you're going to have to create new conveyance ID numbers for those new license plates, if that's the route that you're going to take in order how to identify your conveyance or equipment. You have a tab for notes, and that's just for internal notes that you may want to add or save in the system for the carrier code. Now you have the section for the DIS. If you receive any type of documentation that's registered for the carrier, let's say they give you a copy of the insurance or the power of attorney that you may have. Also, if you get crew members' information, you can go ahead, scan them, save them, and upload them into the DIS system for the carrier code. So once all the information for the carrier has been inputted, you can go ahead, select save, and the system will go ahead and save any of the changes that you've done to the carrier profile. We're going to select close. Now the next step is that we're going to verify how to do the Emanifest. There are a few options on how to generate the Emanifest. The first option that I'm going to show you is how to create an Emanifest the long way. And the reason I show this option first is because you need to know how to create an Emanifest, a detailed Emanifest since the beginning, and how to go in case you get an error that you need to modify information. This is the section where you're going to go into your Emanifest and make any type of modification. So once we go ahead and review this section, then I'll show you the shortcut ways of how to create Emanifest as well. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Emanifest. So to go to the Emanifest module, you're going to go into the Trade tab and then select Emans. The Emanifest module will go ahead and open up, and as you can see on the taskbar, you have a few options, and then you have your filters at the bottom section to go ahead and search previous Emanifests that have been done. You have your grid right here, this section, and you have several columns. All of these columns are modifiable, so we'll go ahead and review that information as well, how to do that. To create a new Emanifest, you select new, and it'll go ahead and pop up the screen. We'll see that in a little bit. Next, you have delete. So if you've done an Emanifest and you need to delete it, this option is not to do the transmission of a deletion of an Emanifest to customs data center. It'll go ahead and delete it from your local system, and we won't be able to recover it if you delete it and then you didn't mean to delete it from the system. So just make sure when selecting this option, delete will basically be that you created an Emanifest by mistake and it never got transmitted and accepted and you need to remove it. You can select it from the grid, select delete, and it'll remove it from your local database. You have the option to search for an Emanifest on the grid that you may have, and basically the search will be by the trip number that you've selected. Select the value, you would enter the trip ID number, find, and it'll go ahead and search for those trips that you've entered. You have the option to refresh, and refresh will go ahead and update any of the information on your grid if you modified anything. Responses, any of the Emanifests that you may have on the grid and you have one of them selected, if you select responses, it'll go ahead and demonstrate the responses for that Emanifest. The option to preview the Emanifest, and then under tools you have different options to go ahead and use for your Emanifest module. So one of the options here under tools that's very important is the option for delivery locations. Now your delivery locations is another catalog that you need to go ahead and create it as you're doing your Emanifest. So the delivery locations will be the location in the US where your merchandise is being sent to when you create this Emanifest. So you would select delivery locations, and you have several, you might have some defaulted locations. If there's none and you need to create a new one, select plus, and the only thing that it requires is the name of the location, the address, city, state, zip code, the country, and then if there's a foreign key assigned to it. Other than that, that would be the only information that is required for you to complete the delivery locations. And we'll go ahead and see that once we start creating your Emanifest, where you need to input the delivery location. The section at the bottom for the filters is if you need to search for certain Emanifest. So if you have the option by users all, it'll demonstrate all the users that create Emanifest. You can play around with the dates on the system. As you can see, my grid refreshed and it demonstrated me all the Emanifests that have been created since 2018 until today's date. You can search by a particular SCAT code. And as you can see, my grid keeps modifying as I'm inputting information. Now, if you want to delete some of the information in any of these columns, sections, all you have to do is just select this section and press Control Delete on your keyboard, and it'll go ahead and delete the information that you inputted. If it's by a particular truck number, you can add the truck, a trailer, the driver, particular e-manifests that were created by drivers, by a certain customers or shipper. You have those options to search information and create the information on your grid. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this section for the columns, they can be modified, or you can use it also as a way to create certain reports by arranging the columns the way that you need it. And under tools, you have the option to save this list into an Excel file. So these are some of the options that you have under the tools. So you can modify the columns, use your filters to generate that report, and then save list to Excel file. It'll basically convert all of this into an Excel file for you. Okay. You can also drag and drop your columns, and you can search, group the information by traffic, like I selected right here, then drag and drop, put it back. Or you want to search by certain customers, you can drag and drop your columns and it'll go ahead and put them in, arrange them for you by the column that you selected. Now you can also do a right click and you have the option for column chooser. The column chooser, basically what it does, it gives you the option to add or remove columns into the grid that you currently have. So let's say if you don't want to see the customer, you can remove the customer column and it'll go ahead and modify the columns for you. If you need the customer back, then just drag and drop and add the customer once again. So that will be the option on how to modify the grid for the Emanifest. Okay. At the bottom, you have color-coded sections. So basically what it does, if they're like in this lavender color, it'll show you that it's the preliminary section, that they've been added to the preliminary. Preliminary basically means that only the trip header was accepted, but not the shipment. So you still have additional sections to transmit. Finalize, once everything for the Emanifest has been transmitted and accepted, then it'll go ahead and turn like a light green, and that'll be that it's finalized. If at any point you have the action D on an Emanifest for deletion, then it'll go ahead and turn like a dark gray, meaning that that Emanifest has the action D for deleted and has been transmitted to be deleted from customs. Okay, when you're going to start doing a new Emanifest, you're going to select the option for new, and then you're going to get this screen. On this screen, you're going to initiate it by adding the carrier code to whom is going to be doing the crossing for the Emanifest. In some instances, there will be carriers that don't have a SCAC code. Customs does have a generic SCAC code for those instances where the carrier code is not registered. The carrier is not registered and they don't have a SCAC code. Okay, so in order to use an unknown carrier code, you're going to use PPCX. Other than that, if the carrier is registered, then go ahead and select their SCAC code that they have registered with customs. On the next section for the trip, you're going to select either to leave it blank, depending how you set up the SCAC code. When we initiated the training, we demonstrated how you can assign the trip numbers for the system to give you the consecutive. If not, if it wasn't selected, then you're going to add the trip number manually on this section. So I'm going to leave mine blank because I'm going to let the system to go ahead and assign the consecutive number for the trip. Next, on the action, you have two options. You have either the option to create a new traffic or use an existing one. The difference on both is that when you create a new traffic, you're telling the system that there's no linking document to this Emanifest, that you're just doing the Emanifest by itself. And it could be because you're doing the Emanifest for somebody else, or you're doing an empty shipment manifest, right? So if there is an entry or an inbound in your system, use the option that says use existing one. This will link your Emanifest to the traffic related to the inbound or entry. So next we're gonna go, if I selected use existing one, I'm gonna go ahead and select a traffic number from the system, and you can either select from the list that is provided, or you can also change the filter so you can go ahead and search for a specific traffic that you're looking to doing the Emanifest for. So right here I'm going to select one, press OK. The system will automatically pull the customer from the entry or inbound. Now if you're using a default or a template that you had previously created, from the program, you can go ahead and select that. Or if this is the new e-manifest that you're generating and you know that you're going to have several e-manifests in the future related to the same one that you're recreating right now, there is an option for you to go ahead and flag those e-manifests as templates, and then you can go ahead and select them for other occasions that you're going to be doing the e-manifest related to the one you're creating right now. So next you have the shipment information. Under the shipment information, you're going to go ahead and select the entry related to the traffic number or the inbound, right? For e-manifest, you're allowed to do them only for entries or entries or inbounds. So right here at the bottom section, we're going to select the plus to append the entry. We're going to hit the 3 dots to search for the entry. It's going to be an entry summary. Next, we're going to go ahead and modify our filters if we do not see the entry within the list that's initially provided on the selection screen. So right here, this is my traffic number. I'm going to select it, press OK. That's my entry. The SCN number is very important. The SCN number is the way how Customs is going to link your entry to the e-manifest. So it's the bill of lading number pertaining to the entry summary. It's going to be your SCN number, which is your shipment control number on your e-manifest. And that's how Customs is going to be able to link both documents together. Now, if you're inputting the information manually because you're doing the e-manifest for somebody else, make sure that the shipment control number you're inputting is correctly, that there's no spaces or special characters in that number. Because if anything is off on the shipment control number, there won't be a link between your document, which is your entry, your inbound, and into your e-manifest. So once you've selected your entry, you can press OK. Or let's say that you're doing a multiple shipment and multiple shipments in one e-manifest. If that's the case, then right here you've already selected one entry. And let's say if you're going to do now an inbound, because you can combine documents between entries and inbounds in one e-manifest, all you would do once again is select the plus key to append, to add the next document, and you search. So if it's going to be an inbound, you select inbounds, look at the filters that you have. If you need to modify information, if it's not on the list, if it's there, just go ahead and select it, and it's going to be added now to the list of the shipment information. If it's going to be only one movement with one e-manifest, then you just leave that initial document that you inputted at the beginning. Select OK. And the system's going to take you now to this screen. This screen will be the header of the e-manifest. And this is where you're going to be adding the information for the crew member, the equipment, conveyance, delivery location, okay? So right here at the top, as you can see, the system will show us the SCAT code, the trip number, which it created automatically because we have the system set up to assign the trip number automatically. The arrival date has to be the current day. You cannot do an e-manifest for a previous date. So it has to be either the arrival date, which is the day that you're generating the e-manifest, or you can also do an e-manifest days in the future, and it has to be the same days that you have allowable for your entry summary. So for an entry summary, you have 10 days to do that entry summary from the date of release. It's the same thing for an e-manifest. You have 10 days for that bill of lading number to do the e-manifest. So if you're going to be doing them in advance, just make sure you stay within the 10 days of the entry summary. The system will automatically give you the time generating the e-manifest. Next, the port where it's going to be doing the crossing, the traffic number pulled from the entry. Now under actions, you have the action for W, which means that you're going to transmit it to be added into the CBP data center. The 3 is to send a deletion of the e-manifest. The Y is a replacement, and the Y is a replacement for a complete e-manifest. So if your manifest had already been finalized and it was accepted and you need to modify information, then you would send the Y to replace any information you need to correct. The Z is a finalization, and usually when you have to transmit a Z is when you're doing an empty shipment. So for the empty shipment, you're going to send the add first to get the trip header certified. Once that section is certified, then you change the action to Z and then transmit it again to send out the finalization saying to customers, we're only sending the header. There's no shipment information involved in this e-manifest. And then you have the preliminary, which means that you're just going to send out the header information. If there's still something pending from the shipment that's not finalized, you got an error, or you need to modify some information on the header section and the e-manifest is not finalized yet, you can send the preliminary once again, which is just the header section. So right here, we're going to leave it with action W. Now the RFA section, this one you will fill it out only when you're going to be doing a replacement for the e-manifest. And the RFA is the reason for amendment, which customs wants to know why are you sending a replacement for the e-manifest. For entry summaries, you have the option for clerical error in manifesting, meaning that there's an error, communications failure, or mechanical failure or unforeseen reason. The one that's common to use for your entry summaries will be option 03, and for Emans, the one that's accepting right now, customs accepts only at the moment, is 18. Okay. Next, you're going to go ahead and select your conveyance ID. Now the conveyance ID, you can start inputting it if you know the number for your conveyance ID, or just press enter and the system will go ahead and display the catalog available pertaining to this carrier code. Select it, press enter. You have the section for IITs. IITs are Instruments of International Trade. Now this section is to be filled out only if the conveyance is going to have Instruments of International Trade. And this is not common to be used, but that's only if the conveyance has certain instruments that are required for it to hold certain merchandise, and then it's going to come back with those equipment still on it. For example, let's say you have a shipment of glass, right? And when you're transferring glass, you're transporting glass, there's certain equipment that it's used to hold the glass. So that's an instrument of international trade, because the conveyance is going to come back with those instruments still intact on its equipment, on the box. Or let's say if it's a box truck or a pickup truck and those instruments still have to come back with the pickup truck, that will be considered instruments of international trade. Now, to be able to use the instruments of international trade, you have to have a bond. And it's either the carrier's bond or the importer's bond that's going to be used for those instruments of international trade. So you would select right here which is the shipment, what it consists. If it's an empty, IIT is covered by the carrier bond, empty and covered by the importer, or it's a shipment that consists of merchandise using the instruments of international trade covered by the carrier or the importer bond. So depending how it's being used, if it's an empty shipment or if it's crossing with actual merchandise, and you know that the shipment has instruments of international trade, then you need to flag that as well. So next you're going to have the section for the equipment. Now for the equipment, like I mentioned earlier, you have the option either to select it from the catalog. You can also search it through a different SCAT code. So if you know that that box might belong to a different carrier code and you already have the information, you can search it through a different SCAT code. Or you also have the option to add it on the fly, which means that let's say you have a equipment ID that you're going to be adding. You press enter and the system asks you, do you want to add the new equipment? You select OK, and it's going to give you now the screen for you to go ahead and input the information. You're going to select what's the equipment type. If it's a flatbed, it's a chassis, it's a box, covered box that you're going to be using, semi-truck trailer, go ahead and select it. Equipment IITs, once again, if the equipment is the one that has the instruments of international trade, then you would select the option for the instruments of international trade. You're going to select the plus to go ahead and input the license plates information, which is the license plates number, the country of issuance, and then the state where it was issued as well. Select the check mark, which means to end the edit and save the information. And now if your equipment has seals, you need to input that information for the seal number. So you would select the plus, start entering the seal numbers. Once done, select the check to go ahead, the check mark to save the information, and then press OK. Now the system has added that equipment number to your Emanifest without being in the catalog. You can also double click on it. It'll open up the information in case you need to go ahead and edit any of the information required. Now you're going to go ahead and select the crew member. So to view the crew members, you can select the down arrow and the system will go ahead and display the crew member that's in the catalog. pertaining to that carrier code. Select enter and it'll go ahead and bring it to the bottom section. One of the things I forgot to mention is that for conveyances, you also have a section to add the serial numbers. Just like the equipment, if the box is the one with serial numbers, you go ahead and input them. But there are occasions where your conveyance might be, like I mentioned before, a box truck and it has the serial numbers that pertain to it, then you would enter the serial number on this section. The status section is for the system to automatically update once you've already transmitted your Emanifest, and the system will go ahead and start updating this section for the trip status. So let's say the trip has been accepted, or it's a preliminary, which is only the header accepted, finalized, or it's been deleted. The system will automatically change this information for you. With the finalized will be the finalized date, and if it's been released, it'll go ahead and add the release date. So these three sections, I'm sorry, will automatically be updated depending on the disposition codes received by customs with the notification. Your delivery location. This section will be where you're going to notify customs where the location of the merchandise is going to be once it's crossed, and it has to be a US address for the delivery location. You can select it from the catalog that you've already created under your delivery locations. Like I mentioned earlier, it will be under tools, and then you have a catalog for delivery locations where you can start inputting those delivery locations, or you can just go ahead and type in the name of the delivery location and input the address. It'll ask you add the delivery location to the database, press OK, and then you can start adding the address for it. The country, state, and zip code is required. So this would be your header section. There are some indicators here, as you can see, that states other indicators. The other indicators, you will use them only if the crossing for this Emanifest that you're creating is either hazardous material or is a fast. It's going to be crossing through the fast lanes, right? So let's say right here I selected the hazardous material. Is going to open up this section that says insurance, which you're going to input the insurance information for this carrier code. I had showed you guys earlier how to go ahead and add the insurance under the carrier profile. So if it's in the carrier profile, it'll go ahead and pull that information into this section. But let's say you didn't add it through the carrier profile, register it for it to stay there defaulted, you have the option to go ahead and enter it manually at the moment that you're creating the Emanifest. If it's going to be crossing through the fast lanes, make sure you add the indicator for fast. And remember that if it's going to be crossing through fast, the carrier, the importer, have to be registered for CT-PAT. You need to add the indicators for the CT-PAT under the carrier profile and under the importer profile as well. And your driver and your conveyance have to have their proximity card numbers registered as well. So once you finish inputting all the information for the header, the next step will be to review the information for the shipment. So next, we're going to go ahead and double click on the section for the shipment. It's going to pop up this screen, and this is where we're going to be inputting the additional information for the shipment. So right here, the system has the entry number because there's an existing entry in the system. Now, let's say if you're doing an Emanifest for an entry or an inbound that does not exist in your program, you can go ahead and leave this section blank for the entry. And you can go ahead and enter the bill type. Now, the bill type is very sensitive on how you're going to go ahead and describe this type of shipment. So if you're doing an entry summary, you're going to leave this section blank. If you were to be doing an inbound, then you're going to select the type of inbound that you're doing, if it's a type 61, 62, or 63. Now, there are other options that that customs requires for you to go ahead and flag the bill of lading type. You may be doing a section 321, which is for goods under $200. Then you go ahead and select the form section 321, which means that There's not an actual entry summary with customs, but there is a paper document saying that you're filing a section 321 for this merchandise and you are required to do an e-manifest for it. And you have two options to do the section 321. It's either the section 321 without reporting any FDA or prior notice information, or if it's a section 321 that requires FDA and prior notice. Okay. So the ones that customs has been using at the moment, it's either the section 321s and then the inbound types. You also have the section 3299, the 3311, and the 7523, which are common and are used frequently with eManifest, depending on the type of shipments that you're using. So for this one, since it's a regular entry summary, we leave it blank. We have the carrier code, and then we have our shipment control number. So it's very important that the SCAC code that you're using belongs to that shipment control number, to the bill of lading number. Next, you have the traffic number, which the system pulls automatically from the header section, and the customer reference related to this entry summary. The RFA, since we're adding the eManifest, we're going to leave it blank, but it's also the reason for amendment at the shipment level. So depending if you had to do some modifications for the eManifest, you also have to report the reason for amendment at the line level and then change the action to replace if you're sending a replacement for the eManifest. Since we're initiating, we're going to leave it with the section add. Next, you need to enter your shipper information with complete name and address, and it should exist in your catalog for your under general PGA entities. Those are going to be the shippers the way they're registered. As you can see, the system will automatically pull the information for you. Next, you have your consignee, and as well, it will be under your general company profiles, consignees, where you go ahead and add them in that section. It'll pull all the information for you. Now at this section at the bottom where it says broker download, if you're doing the eManifest for a broker and that broker has requested to go ahead and receive the broker downloads for information related to your eManifest, you can add them. You just have to add the filer code, their port of entry, and if they have an office code, add the office code. If not, leave it blank. You have this option for split shipment. Now, there has been occasions where the eManifest, they're requesting you to do a split shipment for an eManifest. The way to do the split shipments, you would fill out the same thing the way you're doing it for your eManifest on the header. And when you're getting to the shipment section, you're probably going to be using the same shipment control number because it's the same bill of lading number. They just did it twice to go ahead and mark them as split. When you query them, you'll be able to see that they're flagged as split shipments. Now for that, if it is a split shipment that you're doing, then you're going to enter the quantity related to this shipment. So let's say for this shipment that we're doing a split, this one has 2 pieces, and then the next eManifest that you're going to be doing related to the same SCN number, that one's going to have the other 2 related pieces to complete the 4 pieces in total for the whole bill of lading number. So let's say for this one, we're going to add the quantity of 2. If it were to be we'll be doing a split shipment, we leave it at 2 and continue filling in the rest of the information. If it's a regular eManifest, then you go ahead and leave this section blank. Next, you need to add the places involved for the eManifest. So you need to add your US port of arrival, which it will pull from the entry. If you have it linked to an entry summary, if not, input it manually, the US port of arrival. You need to enter the foreign port of loading, which is the foreign port where the merchandise was loaded. First port of loading, I'm sorry. And then you have your foreign port of receipt. Now the foreign port of receipt is optional because that one is not always necessary. The foreign port of receipt, the way it works is, let's say you have your foreign port of loading where it's coming in from, and then it's going to be received at a second destination before it gets to its final destination. The foreign port of receipt would be that second place where it's going before reaching its final foreign destination. Okay, so you will put foreign port receipt. If not, leave it blank like I mentioned. If you were to be doing an eManifest for the bill of lading for an inbound, you are required to fill out the inbound information. That way, customs will know that there's an inbound related to this e-manifest, and they require to see the inbound information for the e-manifest as well. So you will need to enter the U.S. port of destination, the foreign port of destination, estimated date of exit for that inbound. If there's a Mexican pedimento involved with the inbound, you need to add the Mexican pedimento, and then you need to add the onward carrier and the bonded IRS number for it. If the inbound requires FDA prior notice, then you need to flag the FDA BTA indicator as well. That way custom knows that this e-manifest requires a prior notice, and they'll be able to check their system that the prior notice confirmation numbers have been received for it. Now in the section at the bottom for the shipment details, this is where you're going to go ahead and let customs know what type of merchandise is involved with this e-manifest. You have the option for the description for you to enter it, or the system will go ahead and pull it from the entry summary. You have the quantity, the unit of measure involved, the weight, the unit of measure either in kilos or pounds. Then you need to enter the tariff number involved for the merchandise. It is important and it is mandatory for you to report the tariff number for the merchandise when you're doing your e-manifest. So you will need to input that information, the value for the merchandise, and then the country of origin for the merchandise. The equipment ID, you're going to go ahead and input the equipment ID that you selected in the header, which is the equipment involved where the merchandise is on. The reason it asks for this is because there could be occasions where that you're going to have multiple equipment being pulled by one conveyance. So there could be one conveyance with 2 box trucks, and then customs needs to know in which box is this equipment at, so that in case they need to unload the merchandise, they will know into which box to go into. Next, you have this plus sign for you to go ahead and select it, and this information is to be filled out only if the merchandise that you're going to go ahead and report is going to be a vehicle. You need to report the VIN number involved with the vehicle. It could also be certain type of equipment if it's a tractor. And there might be some show cars. All of those, with anything that has to do with vehicles that contains a VIN number, you need to input the VIN number because it is mandatory for you to report it on the e-manifest. Now also, when we were in the header section, we also saw those flags for hazardous material. Now, if you did indicate that the merchandise that's being transported on this e-manifest is a hazmat material, you do need to report the hazmat information on the description for the shipment. So under hazmat, you have the section for the code. This will be where you're going to input your UN number. The UN number is on the certificate provided to you all with your hazmat information. It's going to be usually a maximum of 4 digits. So you're going to enter that number. The contact will be the contact to whom they need to contact, and it's also should be registered on that document that is provided to you are reporting the hazardous material. Phone number to reach in case an emergency or anything has happened with the merchandise, and then the email of the person. Once that information has been inputted, you select save, and the system will go ahead and save the line information. Now, if there are going to be multiple lines, you're going to keep on adding the plus and add those additional lines involved with these entries, because you can have an entry that has 5 lines and you can group all the information together on one line with the totals, quantities, and values if it's under the same tariff number. But there are, depending on the ports that you're using, some of them are going to be requiring for you all to display the information for each line individually. If that's the case, depending on your port, then just go ahead and select the plus and keep on adding those additional lines required for you to display them. So that would be one thing that you're going to want to verify with your port, how it is they want for you to display the line information on the e-manifest. So once all the information has been inputted, you can select save, and the system will go ahead and add the information complete for the shipment. Like I mentioned earlier, if there's additional shipments involved with this trip, Then keep selecting the plus key and adding those additional shipments involved with the Emanifest. Once all the information has been inputted, you're going to select verify, and the system will go ahead and do a local verification to verify that all the information you've inputted is correct. Now, for instance, right here, since I left the hazardous merchandise filled out, I didn't fill in the rest of the information related to that hazmat, and I'm also missing equipment ID information. So if I would have gotten all green flags, I'll be ready to transmit my Emanifest, send it out, and wait for my responses from customs. I did mention earlier that there are additional ways in order for you to do the Emanifest. This is the long way, which I like to introduce first for you all to learn what each section is, because it's important for you to know your Emanifest module correctly, because if you receive a rejection from customs, you would know how to go into the Emanifest module and correct any information that needs to be corrected to do your retransmission of your Emanifest. Now, the other ways in order for you to do the Emanifest, which is the shortcut way. So now we're going to select the entries. And under the entries module, let's say we're going to be doing the Emanifest for these entries. Let's go ahead and change our date, our range. You're going to select the entry. You're going to select the option for links, and you can do this either through the grid outside of the entry, selecting links, or if you're inside the entry summary, you can also select the option for links. And it's going to pop up this screen, and it's going to give you the same screen either if you do it directly from the grid or within the entry. Select Emanifest. We're going to select the option for new trip and new shipment, which means we're initiating a new Emanifest, right, for this entry summary. If you're going to be doing multiple shipments within one trip, on the first entry that you're going to be doing the Emanifest, you're going to select the option new trip, new shipment, and then for each additional that you're going to be adding to the same trip number, you're going to select the option existing trip, new shipment, meaning that it's going to link all the additional entries or inbounds into that one trip you first created on your list of entries that you're going to be linking together. So we're going to select new trip, new shipment, select OK, and it's going to open up this screen. Right here, we're going to select the SCAC code, which is the carrier code. As you can see, it already gave us a trip number, it gave us our customer number, it gave us our traffic, and it pulled the entry information for the Emanifest. You select OK, and the system's going to give you once again the information for your Emanifest in order for you to start filling in the information. You're going to select your conveyance, if there's any IIT, CO numbers, equipment, crew, delivery location. Then once again, go into your entry. It already pulled your shipper information, your consignee information, and it gives you already the information pulled from the entry for your merchandise. Now, once again, if it involves any vehicles or hazmat information, make sure you fill in that documentation that is required for this type of movements. If all your information is correct and filled out correctly, do the verify and then do the transmission for your Emanifest. When an Emanifest has been transmitted and it's accepted correctly, you're going to get a notification on your Emanifest that states that it has been finalized. And you're going to see Emanifest accepted, finalized, right? That's going to mean that your Emanifest was completely accepted. Now, there can be occasions when the information that you transmitted might be correct on the header section, but you're missing information. There's some information that's incorrect under the shipment information. You probably get returned to preliminary. That response means that your header was accepted, but your shipment is rejected. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and verify the shipment information. Make sure that everything has been correct. If that does get to happen, let's say it'll accept part of your Emanifest and it accepts only your header section, but it doesn't accept your shipment information, then you do have the option to go ahead and retransmit the information. What you're going to do, you're going to you're going to change your RFA, and the RFA code will be changed to 03 for an entry summary. Your action is going to be to replace, because it's going to replace header information because it has been accepted, but then at your shipment section, you're going to leave it with an action add to go ahead and transmit the shipment to go ahead and be accepted once you modified any of the information that might have been incorrect with the Emanifest on the shipment section. Then again, you do the verify and retransmit your Emanifest. So once the whole Emanifest has been completed and has been finalized, you do have the option to go ahead and do the preview, verify your Emanifest, and it's going to go ahead and display all the information related to the Emanifest. This Emanifest right here, for instance, that we're viewing on the screen, it has multiple shipments. When it's a multiple shipment Emanifest, you'll be able to view all the information for those shipments as well on the preview for the Emanifest. So once you see the preview, you're going to be able to display all the information related to the Emanifest. As you can see, since that one's a multiple shipment, you'll be able to view all the lines involved for the multiple shipment Emanifest. Even if it was just a one shipment, you'll be able to display all the information related to the shipment control number with the merchandise information. The system will go ahead and show who's the driver with the conveyance information, trailer number, plates, the date that the manifest was submitted, and if it requires any hazardous material. This would be the module for the Emanifest. Hopefully it will help you and assist you in generating your Emanifest. If at any point you have any questions, doubts, or rejections from customs that you may need assistance from, please do not hesitate and contact the support department at RB Systems, which is support@rbsystems.com, and send us an email with the information that you require assistance with on the Emanifest, or contact our department 956-791-2119. Thank you. Have a great day.